Part 99. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 984. However, during this period of time, Gretel really didn't accumulate any energy-shaping spells. As the saying goes, your eyes will betray you, your ears will betray you, but not math. If you don't know math, you won't greet is the same now. Knocking on the head is of no use. Picking it up and shaking it won't produce any energy evocation spells. Archmage Baebo raised his eyebrows, squinted his eyes, and looked at Gretel with his arms folded. Gretel could only raise his face and smile at him. Senior brother. Don't call me senior brother, Archmage Baebo wanted to hit him twice more. Have you finished writing the paper? Read your book after you finish it. Before the large group of people set off, you should read the book quickly. If you have any questions that you don't understand, I can't answer them. You can also send a message to the teacher through the Mage Tower. Although it takes a lot of energy to transmit a message from the Mage Tower, but, well, who made little Gretel a fortune? Take out a handful of those high-level Warcraft crystal cores and mid-level Warcraft crystal cores from the box, they are enough. Gretel muttered and crawled to read a book. Many of the materials given by the eldest brother are the secrets of Thunderhorn, and are even originals, such as the information written on the skin of an unknown animal, or the yellow, hard, and brittle manuscript. Ordinary magicians can only borrow copies at most, and even copies cannot be borrowed. They can only read on the terminal projected by the tower spirit, and some are not even allowed to copy. And the senior brother was able to lend the original document and bring it all the way here. It is estimated that in addition to his own credibility, he may also be taking advantage of the teacher. But it's worth it. The notes of high-level mages often include the imprints of their spiritual power that were unconsciously left at the moment they were recorded. It can be calm, intense, exciting, or frightening. By experiencing these imprints, you can get several times, even dozens of times more information than simply reading the text. However, except for the core disciples of a school, it is impossible for ordinary magicians to receive this kind of treatment. Even for him, it would be best for him to finish reading these materials as soon as possible and then hand them over to his senior brother and bring them back intact with the airship. It would be good for everyone. Otherwise, the precious documents will be lost, and the senior brother and even the teacher will be disgraced. Gretel dove into the paperwork and gnawed at it for 2 days in a daze. On the third night, I was finally dragged out by my senior brother. Don't be too busy reading. We're leaving tomorrow. Check your things and see what else needs to be replenished. If you miss this place, you won't have anywhere to buy it in the future. Didn't I buy enough things? I bought enough things before setting off from Nevis, enough to last for several years. Greet mumbled and was carried out of the hotel. As soon as he went out, he saw Sarira, Lynn, Bernard, and Mr. Baransimo lined up, standing there waiting for him. Cyrilla waved to him with a smile. Greet, come on. Let's go shopping. We found a very interesting store. Ah, okay. Tomorrow we will board the airship. The size of the airship is only a little bit big. It can accommodate a large group of people and also carry cargo. Gretel took a breath and stepped onto the street. Okay, let's go together. People were coming and going on the streets. After a little observation, Greet found that the direction of the flow of people was very purposeful. Most of them were walking on the line between the port and the center of the town. There were also some people who were in a hurry, carrying bags and trailers, and walking to higher places outside the town. Looking up slightly, there was a very eye-catching airship parked on the flat ground at the top of the hill. What are they doing? Haven't they finished replenishing supplies? Of course, Archmage Baebo walked slowly with his hands behind his back. In addition to supplies, we also need to add some manpower. In particular, We are looking for some businessmen who are willing to open stores in the Eagle country, or at least, do short-term acquisitions. Those in Nevis, alas. Greet nodded silently. Most of the businessmen who have been rooted in Nevis for a long time have their own customary import and export channels. On the contrary, these businessmen who have gone overseas to explore markets are more familiar with the situation in the New World and have more flexible business methods. He just chatted with his senior brother for a few words before he was pulled forward by Sirui. It's said to be shopping, but it's actually not that far away. Around the small square in the center of the town are the largest shops in the town. Mayflower Tavern, the largest tavern in the town and the only three-story tavern. The Steel and Anchor Hotel, next to the tavern, had sailors who smelled of the sea coming in and out, singing loudly. Kinley Road Saddler's shop has a rather large yard behind the shop, and a row of stables on the edge of the yard. In addition, there is a special narrow fence, which makes it easier to shoe the horses and change their shoes after driving them in. The Mithril Rose Hotel is the hotel where Greet and the others stayed. In fact, all spellcasters will be directed to this hotel after arriving in Waltham. Gretel, on the other hand, was dragged by Cyrilla into the small street behind the Mithril Rose. After 3 detours and 2 detours, we arrived at a warm house. The 3-story red brick house has clean walls and is surrounded by a rose hedge, forming a small courtyard. It's not early summer yet, and there are already dots of flowers poking out from the flower hedges, pink, white and light red, and lively. Is this a home? Doesn't it look like a shop? Gretel raised his head in the dusk and looked around. Cyrilla had already pulled him forward, and after less than half a turn, there was a gust of wind carrying a scent that hit his nostrils. It was warm and rich, and made his stomach growl. Cyrilla had already caught up 2 steps and shouted. "Uncle Hawthorne! We are here to eat." "I'm coming." A tall man with black hair and black eyes walked out of the house quickly. He had deep eyebrows and a clean shave, with only a short black beard on his upper lip. He smiled warmly, leaned over and pushed open the low wooden door in the middle of the hedge, and Cyrilla jumped in eagerly. Greet stopped at the entrance of the garden and looked up at the sign hanging high under the windowsill on the 2nd floor of the house. Flint and Jasmine. Flint and Jasmine Adventure Supplies Store, the man who came out to open the door said with a hearty smile. Yes, this is it. It sells all kinds of adventure supplies and has a small restaurant. My wife's cooking is delicious. Cyrilla had already passed him by and rushed in quickly. After a moment, her cheers rang out in the kitchen. Apple pie. Honey grilled ribs. Red wine beef tongue. Crab cakes. Sister Jasmine, you are great. By the way, these are for you. Uncle Hawthorne, Sister Jasmine, what kind of self-taught names are these? Gretel just shook off his sweat when he heard bang, 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 the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground, and unfamiliar exclamations. At the same time the kitchen sounded. Gretel was startled, and the face of the shopkeeper, Uncle Hawthorne, changed, and he rushed into the kitchen in 3 steps at a time. He runs with a slight limp, but his speed is faster than Gretel. Jasmine. What's wrong with you? Ah. Greet followed closely. I saw 7 or 8 large blue lobsters crawling all over the ground, one by one, in front of Cyrilla. Cyrilla was holding one in her hand, holding it high in front of her face, showing it to a young woman in her 20s. This is what I caught all afternoon. It's the biggest one. Gretel sighed silently. The lobster's 2 large claws were spread out, wider than her shoulders, and it was as tall as half a person from head to tail. The shrimp gun was hard and pointed upward, wrapped in a dense cold air. Just that energy fluctuation, level 5 Warcraft is guaranteed. Sarah, if you throw it out like this, you have to see if others can do it. Unconsciously, he had said this. Cyrilla turned back and gave him a white look. If you don't want to kill me, come and kill me. I can kill them all. I've killed them all, please ask Sister Jasmine to do it again. The tone is full of coquettishness. Greet smiled, and saw the Sister Jasmine wiped her hands on her apron, and calmly pulled out a sharp knife. He took the blue lobster with his other hand and slapped it on the chopping board. Naturally, tough vines wrapped around the big lobster. What can't be done? I just haven't seen such a big blue lobster in many years. They are hard to catch, pretty girl, you go to the store and it will be ready in a moment. Do you want to do all of these? Do it all. Let's eat together, Sirara nodded vigorously. Ignoring what the landlady said behind her, this is too expensive, she turned around like a whirlwind and dragged Gretel out of the kitchen. Greet, look. There are some gadgets here, they are so interesting. After leaving the kitchen and coming to the front hall, Gretel carefully observed the whole Flint and Jasmine room. With the main entrance as the boundary, the first floor is divided into left and right sides. On the left-hand side are 3 or 4 sets of tables and chairs, large and small, a wooden platform by the window, and a row of high round stools behind the wooden platform. Judging from the furnishings, it is obvious that it is a small restaurant, which can accommodate 20 or 30 people in total. There is a long counter on the right, which is full of magic potions and magic scrolls commonly used by adventurers. But it wasn't these that caught Gretel's attention, but a small camp at the end of the counter, against the wall. The camp was surrounded by a pile of pebbles, with fishing nets covering the top, creating a small independent world. A tent was propped up in the center, and runes loomed on the skin. Gretel glanced at it and saw many uses such as waterproofing, insect repellent, and warmth preservation. The tent door curtain is opened, and when you look through the opening, you can see that there are all ground mats, sleeping bags, water bottles and other supplies inside. Outside the tent, there are also some strange-looking gadgets piled up. After charging, it can emit steady strong light or a flashing tube. A heating column that can emit light and heat within a certain range and keep you warm. A small, portable version of a heat lamp. Or maybe it's a round can engraved with fire heating runes. Oh, be careful about this, Gretel was about to reach out to take it, but was stopped by Mr. Hawthorne. This is a high-pressure heating tank. There is nothing in it now. Don't open it. It will explode. Did you invent all of these? Gretel looked at the same thing with shining eyes. What a good thing. With these things, they don't have to do everything by themselves when camping outside. Although it's not impossible to do it yourself, but who doesn't want to be lazy when you can? It's a pity that I couldn't buy it in Nevis. Last time I came to Waltham, I left in a hurry and couldn't take a good stroll. Visit. Yes, Mr. Hawthorne laughed loudly. When I was an adventuring mercenary in the cold Northland, I wished I had these things. Now that I am a shopkeeper, I will try my best to create them, hoping to bring convenience to other adventurers. What do you think? Are you interested? It's quite ingenious. The other hand took the jar from Gretel, turned it upside down, and looked at it carefully. Archmage Baebo quickly looked around and nodded. Are you interested in taking another adventure? Find a new, interesting place to provide convenience for new adventurers. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Emochenbay for the 600 starting coins. @Joshua Snipe comes out to claim the character you created. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 985. Take a risk? Open a store somewhere else. The smile on Uncle Hawthorne's face remained unchanged, but froze slightly, and he turned his head and looked inward. There was a clanging sound from the kitchen. The sound of the knife chopping carapace, the sound of kitchen utensils moving, the sound of running water, were mixed with the energetic shouting of Mrs. Hawthorne, that is, Ms. Jasmine. Dear guests, what flavor do you want to eat? Lobster? Steamed? Boiled? Grilled with sauce? Do you want some minced garlic? Everyone wants it, Cyrilla shouted back even louder. Sister Jasmine, do what you are good at and what you like to eat. Anyway, I caught a lot. Do you want some peppers? I brought very good peppers. Uncle Hawthorne looked towards the kitchen with a smile, his eyes warm. He paused for a moment and turned back to Archmage Baebo. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, Archmage Baebo waved his hand casually. Hey, let's eat first. Let's talk after we're full. I heard that your wife is very good at her crafts. That's not true, a bright voice came from the kitchen. Ms. Jasmine came over briskly, carrying a large plate 2 feet in diameter, and placed the plate on the largest wooden table. When the lid is opened, the aroma immediately overflows. I cook all the dishes in our house. Bake bread, bake biscuits, stew meat, fry fish, stew soup. She laid out a stack of small bowls and neatly scooped out bowls of steaming seafood soup, starting with Archmage Baebo. When he placed it in front of Mr. Valensimo, he raised his chin and smiled at him. Don't forget that he is very good at cooking game. When venturing in the wild, he can make delicious dishes out of everything he catches. He can't compare to me in his ability to cook at home. That's it, Valensimo sat still, raising his head and smiling at Ms. Jasmine. It was obvious that he was quite familiar with them. After finishing laughing, he scooped up half a spoonful of fish soup and shook it towards Mr. Hawthorne opposite. My level is about the same as him, far behind you. Beautiful lady, when will the other dishes be served? I'm starving to death. Jasmine smiled and turned around, returning to the kitchen to get busy. The fragrant stewed seafood soup, golden and sweet honey grilled ribs, supple and rich red wine beef tongue, crispy and charred on the outside, fresh and sweet crab cakes on the inside, all are served on the table like water. Tasty. Tasty. It's delicious, it's delicious, it's delicious, The portion of the dish was really large, so Gretel and Archmage Baebo tasted a little of each item before politely stopping their knives and forks. A small bowl of soup, a small piece of ribs, a piece of beef tongue, and a thick piece of crab cake. I was almost half full. There is still such a big lobster that is not served, and the aroma of desserts is constantly wafting from the kitchen. I really can't eat any more. If I eat more, I won't be able to eat the rest. However, Cyrilla was eating so hard that she couldn't even raise her head. She moved the spoon like flying, and her whole little face was buried in the bowl. There was a piece of honey stuck to the corner of my mouth. It was shiny and greasy, and I couldn't even spare my hand to wipe it. It's delicious, it's fragrant and sweet. Sister Jasmine, do you still have the crab cakes? Give me another plate. Coming. Ms. Jasmine rolled out of the kitchen like a storm, put down a plate of crab cakes, and placed them all in front of Cyrilla. Seeing the silver dragon girl's face light up, she couldn't help but smile and wipe her hands on her apron. Do you want more? We don't have any crab meat for now. If you still want it, I can make some lobster meat. Well, no need for now, I'm waiting for the lobster. Cyrilla only answered one sentence before chewing hard. The crab cakes are made purely from fresh crab leg meat, which was probably still alive when the meat was removed. The crab meat has clear strands and the meat is delicate and elastic. Squeeze a little lemon juice and sprinkle it on top to bring out all the sweetness. Good times, good times. Gretel, you are the one again. With a snap, a thick crab cake fell directly onto Gretel's plate. Gretel took a deep breath. He weighed his digestion capacity and hesitantly picked up the knife and fork. While cutting, look for topics to chat with the owner. Mr. Hawthorne, these things in your store are so convenient for adventurers to use. Of course, Uncle Hawthorne laughed. He glanced back at the furnishings in the store area and raised his head, full of pride. I used to be an adventurer too. Until you got an arrow in the knee. Greet interfaced reflexively. Uncle Hawthorne raised his eyebrows. How do you know? But it was not an arrow, but an ice pick. Greet took a hissing breath. An arrow in the knee or something like that is funny to outsiders, but it is not funny at all to doctors. The structure of the knee is complex, precise, and fragile. Joint capsules, synovial membranes, cartilage, etc., if exercised too much, they will be worn out and damaged. If they are not exercised enough, there will be insufficient blood supply and nourishment, and they will still be damaged. Not to mention suffering from trauma, recovery is really a lot of problems. Whether they are orthopedics or rehabilitation doctors, they are all one head and too big. I was the one who hit that ice pick in the kitchen, a smiling voice carried a fragrant aroma, approaching from far away. Bang, 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 several plates of large lobsters were placed on the table one after another. One plate is steamed, one plate is boiled, one plate is added with minced garlic, and one plate is baked with cheese. The aroma is overflowing. Jasmine holds a silver knife in her hand and cuts open the lobster shell, slightly dividing it to both sides, revealing large chunks of snow-white shrimp meat. And jumped out impatiently. That's right, she was the one who beat me. Uncle Hawthorne leaned back, avoiding the hot plate, turned his head and smiled. Then she compensated herself to me. We came here and opened this Flint and Jasmine. Flint is my nickname and Jasmine is hers. Over the past few years, I have been fattened by her. 40 pounds. He patted his stomach hard and made a bang-bang sound, brazenly showing his happy life after marriage. Jasmine rolled her eyes at him coquettishly and sat down next to him. The next second, a large piece of white lobster meat fell on her plate. She is the only one who can never gain weight no matter what she eats. After several years, she is still so young and beautiful. I really envy her. Because I am a half-elf. Mrs. Hawthorne rolled her eyes lightly at her husband. While talking, she took a fist-sized piece of steamed lobster meat for her husband, cut it into pieces, poured sauce on it and pushed it in front of him. How can a half-elf get fat so easily? It's not like you, sitting here looking at the store every day, eating without moving. This year alone, I have already put 2 buckles on my belt. Gretel watched the interaction between the couple quietly, with a smile unknowingly filling the corners of her mouth. Beside him, Cyrilla leaned over gently, lowered his arm, and lightly scratched his palm with her little finger. You are not allowed to get fat. Do you hear me? That's for sure. Greet replied softly. Originally, he wanted to help his senior brother and persuade the shop owner and his wife to move to another place to open a shop, but now he has withdrawn his idea. Cut the lobster meat into pieces, dip it in some sauce, chew it and swallow it together. The 2 adventurers, through hardships and winds and rains, finally managed to settle down. Why bother them? It would be great if people live happily. As for the mission in Eagle Country, you can definitely find someone else. Is Madam a half-elf? Archmage Baebo put down his fork and suddenly spoke. He looked at the couple's appearance carefully. Mr. Hawthorne looks like he is 37 or 18 years old. It must be said that he is 40 years old. He is already old enough to be called an uncle. Mrs. Hawthorne, or Miss Jasmine, was lithe in stature and delicate in appearance. Judging purely from appearance, she is at most 23 or 4 years old, and she looks youthful and beautiful in her speech and laughter. If they were of the same age when they met, now they look like they are 14 or 15 years apart. And as time goes by, the difference in appearance between humans and half-elves will get bigger and bigger. He is 14 or 15 years old now. In a few years, he will look like he is more than 20 years old. In a few years, he will even look like his grandparents. And this gap will only widen, not narrow, until death separates them. Yes, Ms. Jasmine nodded with a smile. She casually lifted up her long, luxuriant hair, revealing ears that were a bit longer than ordinary people but not too obvious. You can't really tell, can you? My mother said that I haven't been able to tell much since I was a child, except for these ears. Just wear a hat. Or grow your hair longer. Just don't get too close to people, otherwise, those people are so annoying. As she spoke, she looked back at her husband with tenderness in her eyes. Even him. If I hadn't injured him then and owed him a favor, I wouldn't have ignored him. Sir, do you still want to take a step further on the path of a warrior? Archmage Baebo nodded and asked. With your current level, if you go one step further and reach the level of a great knight, your lifespan can be extended a lot if you supplement it with some drugs, your youth can be extended even longer, I can't say how much more, 20 or 30. There are years. No. No. The Hawthorns spoke in unison without looking at each other. Ms. Jasmine smiled and leaned on her husband's shoulder. It's too dangerous to go any further. On the path of a warrior, every time you advance to a level, you have to risk your life. I can't bear to do it, it's good that he is like this. Really, being together quietly is better than anything else. Even if the cost is decades of loneliness for the other party after one party reaches the end of his life. Greet wanted to ask. Archmage Baebo already left. There are ways to advance without going into battle, but they are more expensive. But now there is a good opportunity. He raised his hand and sketched a patch of light and shadow, which was a map of the northern and southern parts of the New World, as well as the Storm Islands in the middle. The Archmage pointed to the location of the Eagle Kingdom and said. The Parliament was invited to go to the Eagle Country to help them resist the invasion of the Holy See. We plan to set up a stronghold here, and then open trade routes to attract merchants and adventurers. Of course, the Mage Tower will be built, but mages cannot do everything, and there must be shops that serve merchants and adventurers. As the first group of people to take risks, the Parliament is willing to provide sufficient protection and preferential treatment to these businessmen who are willing to take risks. At this point, Mr. Hawthorne could come to a conclusion with little thought. But for him, giving his wife a quiet and warm environment is more important than anything else. Of course, if his wife is interested, he can't go to the Eagle Country. He subconsciously turned to look at his wife, only to see Jasmine staring blankly at the narrow emerald green continent below the light and shadow. His eyes were fixed, almost in a trance. What's the matter, Jasmine? Mr. Hawthorne asked softly. Jasmine looked at the continent carefully, from the top to the bottom, from the towering mountains to the green rainforest. Mom told me that my father was from there. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Cat wants to eat Wolfgang's Steakhouse's signature crab cakes. But it's so expensive, and there's no one to accompany me to eat, so I can't eat alone, I'm crying. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 986. The Hawthorne couple finally decided to open a store in the Eagle Country for a few years. Parliament gave them quite generous terms. They are allowed to choose their own store location within a certain range, and a dedicated person will build a store for them and set up a magic circle, promising that the store will always be under the protection of the Mage Tower. Promise them the exclusive right to purchase certain categories of goods, as well as the exclusive right to sell certain categories of output from the Mage Tower. Promising them discounted prices for the drugs and services Mr. Hawthorne uses to advance. Promise to be tax-free for 2 years, and tax-halved for the next 3 years. It was promised that their residence and store in Waltham would be guarded and maintained by a local mage tower, and that they would be returned to them intact when they came back. The most important thing is that after reading the map, Ms. Jasmine really hopes to walk south from the Eagle Country one day. If she's lucky, can we dig out her bastard, heartless father who never came back after leaving the two of them behind? From the southern jungle? And Uncle Hawthorne naturally sacrificed his life to accompany his wife. If you want to accompany your wife, you must take action and have strength. In order to build up enough strength, the former mercenary nicknamed Firestone rolled up the rolls, checked out all the special products in the store, and boarded the airship with his wife. All the way to the west and south. The huge airship rode on the long wind and crossed the vast land of the New World. Fly over mountains, cross rivers, and overlook plains. Plains covered with green, sparkling rivers and lakes receded beneath their feet. The airship opened its light sail and flew at high speed over the new continent, crushing clouds and breaking through turbulence, flying at a speed several times faster than Appa running at full speed. What? You mean hitting a bird? In the airship, more than a dozen archmages took turns releasing their auras, shocking everyone in the world. There are flying monsters with no eyes. When they fly close, they turn away quickly. This journey only encountered obstacles in one place. After flying to the location where the tribes fought against the Plague Girl, the great magicians disembarked from the airship and conducted a frantic investigation. Holding various magic props in hand, casting various spells, walking through the entire battlefield step by step. Especially those in Black Crow Swamp, they want to dig out the soil. That's enough for you. Don't waste time here, Archmage Baebo finally couldn't stand it anymore. We'll get nothing if we wait here for the Glory Holy See to attack and destroy the Eagle Kingdom. Oops, I have to wait for the Eagle Kingdom to invite someone. Archmage Hines stood on the edge of the swamp, his white bone robe moving without any wind, without looking back. If it weren't for the worry that the juniors were around, I would have wanted to stick my nose into the swamp. Greed felt that these swamps had been cleaned up, there was no problem, and there was no need to take care of them anymore. But in the eyes of a high-level necromancer, the floating ghosts, wailing undead, and lingering resentment taste so sweet. Although the quality of the souls of the indigenous people is a bit poor, the ones that can survive to this day are still of a relatively high level during their lifetime. The Eagle Country won't come to invite people? It would be best not to invite someone, just let him take his disciples to clean this place. Lin, he shouted over his shoulder. Come and take a look at this swamp. How are you doing with the Wall of Soul spell? Archmage Baebo shrugged and walked away slowly. By the way, why haven't the Golden Eagle warriors from the Eagle Kingdom come yet? Haven't they already asked the Kestrel tribe to send a message? Could it be that he was scared away when he saw the airship? In the distant country of eagles, the Golden Eagle warriors and White Eagle warriors soared high in the sky, overlooking the ant-like flow of people on the mountain road below, all of them with pale faces. An older White Eagle warrior said bitterly. How dare they? Those invaders, how dare they, and those who helped the invaders, they betrayed the glory of the Eagle God, they should all be tied to the cactus, sunbathed to death, and eagles killed pecked to death, bitten to death by a poisonous snake. It's no use saying this, the Golden Eagle soldier leading the team shouted to him. The problem now is that their steel swords can cut through our obsidian blades. Don't tell me about the weapons that high-level warriors have cultivated, the stone swords of the Black Eagle warriors are vulnerable to them. Their spears can easily pierce our leather armor. Their floating cities, those tall four-legged monsters, can make sounds like thunder and trample through our formation. When will our allies arrive? A month has passed. Did the youngest son of the God of Thunder take our gifts and plan to run away? The Eagle Country is under great pressure. Those white ghosts, after being repulsed by them for the first time, have made a comeback. A large row of floating cities is parked on the seaside, each city is towering, and the white clouds above the city sometimes open and sometimes close, until they float to the height of dozens of people. From the top of the city, four-legged monsters came down, running like flying and making sounds like thunder. The light from the hands of those white ghosts was like sharp spears. Those who are illuminated by the light, even the most cowardly and despicable indigenous warriors, can immediately cheer up and fight with their warriors inextricably. If they fight against such a large number of soldiers, as well as the entangled soldiers of the city-state who betrayed the eagle god, they will pay a heavy price. The Golden Eagle warriors are nervous, silent, and waiting for their allies. And Alfonso Cortez, who was riding a horse and walking on the mountain road, also frowned and beat his shoulders hard. He is the deputy governor of the Storm Islands district, one of the 4 major governorships in the New World. Although he was the deputy governor in name, the actual power was in the hands of the governor. He was sent here to retire. There was nothing he could do about it. Who asked him to flirt with someone he shouldn't have molested, and then he was exposed again? Pooh! Who wants to retire in the New World? It's stuffy and hot, there are a lot of mosquitoes, there's no opera, no dance, no good food, no beautiful women who can talk about literature and philosophy, but nothing. Looking around, he saw a wild wilderness. Except for a few of his followers, they were the yellow-skinned, shirtless natives who couldn't even understand the language. If you want to retire, you have to go back to Brolin Kingdom to retire. However, if you want to return to Brolin's kingdom, you have to hand over a large amount of money. If you want to hand over a large amount of money, you have to make a large amount of money. The problem is that all mining rights and tax collection rights in the Storm Islands are in the hands of the governor. The only things he could mobilize were a city that was not on the main waterway, the churches around the city, and the surrounding plantations. He watched helplessly as the governor made a huge fortune inexplicably a few years ago, and he had no way to get involved. Hateful. Fortunately, last year, he got news about the Eagle Country from adventurers and businessmen. A country, an indigenous country, a country with temples paved with gold and roads flowing with silver. Wasn't this just made for him? Deputy Governor Alfonso gathered a group of people, his own knights, bishops in the church, and mercenaries in the city. He hired a group of merchant ships and set out for the Eagle Country. Of course, how many of the so-called merchant ships are actually pirates? Deputy Governor Alfonso turned a blind eye and closed one eye, deciding to pretend not to see it. 11 ships, a team of 550 people, and 16 horses. The first attack was overwhelming and indeed achieved considerable results. When the natives saw them from a distance, most of them fled in all directions. However, when they reached the bottom of the plateau, they encountered strong resistance. Those warriors. Those flying warriors. Densely packed, they flew down from the high cliffs, and their flapping wings temporarily covered the sky. Deputy Governor Alfonso felt ice cold all over for a moment. So many warriors, so many heavenly knights above level 15? As long as 5 heavenly knights join forces to attack, his team can be wiped out under the cliff. Fortunately, those warriors seemed to rely on the power of the evil god to fly, and did not have the powerful power of the heavenly knight to crack mountains and crack rocks. Even so, the spears thrown from their hands caused great damage to the brave warriors. Vice-Governor Alfonso retreated hastily. After returning to the ship for inspection, hundreds of people were dead, and almost everyone else was injured. Although a batch of gold and silver was snatched back, it was not enough. Totally not enough. What to do, how to conquer this country and swallow this piece of fat deliciously? Deputy Governor Alfonso was at a loss for a while. At this moment, a priest with ragged clothes and torn robes, but his eyes were still bright, quietly walked into his governor's palace. "Dear Governor, I have a way to spread the glory of the Lord in that land." The cleric came up with a plan. "Join forces with the Plague Maiden to spread the disease to the Eagle Country, Just some time ago, there was a wave of smallpox in the Storm Islands, weakening the power of the natives and evil gods. At the same time, the Governor-General can send priests to treat the local indigenous people, win over them, unite them, and ultimately turn them into a sharp sword pointing at the Eagle Country. I have been walking on this land for a long time. The indigenous people here are composed of city-states, and they do not completely surrender to the Eagle Country. The visitor's eyes were shining brightly under his hood. In order to offer sacrifices to the evil gods, the Eagle Country constantly asks for human sacrifices from them, and even directly attacks and destroys city-states. The locals are very resentful. As long as we can win over a few city-states, we can successfully enter this country. Stepping into their royal capital. That makes sense. Deputy Governor Alfonso stroked his raised mustache and nodded majestically. But, who will do the work of joining forces with that evil god, the plague girl you mentioned? I'm coming. The white-robed priest raised his head proudly. In order to spread the glory of my lord, I will not hesitate to be filthy temporarily. I only hope that after the incident is completed, Your Excellency the Governor can take me in, protect me, and give me a place in the city. He rolled up a blanket and walked out proudly. 2 months later, Deputy Governor Alfonso heard news of an epidemic of smallpox near the Eagle Country from adventurers and merchants. It should be soon, we can send troops soon. Vice Governor Alfonso kept praying. However, the good news of the large-scale epidemic of smallpox in the Eagle Kingdom has not been received for a long time. The only certainty is that the tribes and city-states near the coast are turning to the white-robed priest one after another. Send troops. He finally made up his mind. He personally went to the Governor-General and borrowed a powerful army, including an 18th-level archbishop who was in charge of the Governor-General's district, using his own power and the next 10 years' profits as collateral. In addition, a large corps of soldiers was gathered and 10 times as many pirates were hired. There are many sails and rafters, blocking out the sky and the sun, setting out for the Eagle Kingdom. This time, we must complete the victory in one battle. It's July 22 ND, we are still 124 votes short of 1,000 votes, we are still many votes short of 2,000 votes. Cat also wants to get 2,000 votes this month so that he can add 2 more chapters. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 987. Looking forward to, the message from the Kestrel tribe came. Looking forward to, the reinforcements from the Son of Thunder God are coming. The Eagle Kingdom looked forward to reinforcements, just like looking at the clouds during a severe drought, and immediately sent a golden eagle warrior and 10 white eagle warriors to greet them. Thank God, they are finally here. If we don't come again, the Eagle Kingdom will have to face the attack of the white ghosts alone, and it is conceivable that it will suffer great losses. Once the power of the golden eagle warriors, female snakes, and even the eagle gods and snake gods is greatly reduced, the Eagle Kingdom will immediately be unable to deter the scattered small city-states around it. If you can't intimidate small city-states, you can't get them to surrender humans and animals. Without being able to make them surrender human sacrifices, there would be no way to conduct large-scale human sacrifices. If there is no way to perform human sacrifices, it will not be able to please the gods and replenish the power of the gods. Invite them immediately. To show solemnity, and to avoid further conflicts and losing popularity, the Eagle Country specially sent a senior golden eagle warrior to greet him. This man's name is Nahuatl, he is over 60 years old, his hair is mostly gray, and he is ranked only under the leader of the Golden Eagle. If he hadn't been seriously injured when he was young and unable to inherit a large amount of the power of the Eagle God, he should have become the leader. Even so, Nahuatl is not anxious or annoyed. He is cheerful every day and has a good temper. Among the current generation of Golden Eagle warriors, he watched half of them grow up and even taught them with his own hands. He has always had great experience in dealing with those naughty little guys. After sending him out, everyone from the Golden Eagle leader to Chiwakoto and Trotoani felt quite relieved. If this person comes forward, he won't offend the other party for no reason, right? Nahuatl also felt that with his presence, he should be able to welcome people back to the Eagle country safely and smoothly. He took 10 of his subordinates and flew all the way north, flying down the plateau, over the forest, and over the swamp. A 5-day journey, completed in 3 days. Arriving at the place where the plague girl finally died, according to the news from the Kestrel tribe soldiers, look for something very, very big that can be seen from a long distance. I can't say, but you will know when you see it, it must be it. Damn it, how can I find this? Are you sure you can find it? Are you sure that you are really not wrong, and then you provoke a high-level monster and fight it in vain? Nahuatl was filled with doubts. However, the Kestrel warrior's face was full of exhaustion. After flying to the plateau in one breath, he collapsed there, unable to drag or lift. He had no choice but to fly thousands of miles and look down at the place. Then, this warrior who had gone deep into plateau caves, explored dense jungles, killed poisonous insects and monsters, and even fought storms and giant whales at sea, took a deep, deep breath. The thing lying on the ground is indeed as the Kestrel warrior said, when you see it, you know it must be it. It stopped quietly on the open ground, like a giant whale out of the water, but it was bigger than the largest whale. There were sparkling waves all around, and there was a circle of floating things that looked like fish fins and wings, and they were much bigger than wings. Surrounding that dark-colored thing, it's like building a lake for it. Around the lake, there are many ant-like dots coming and going. At first glance, it is almost unnoticeable, but if you look closely, you can easily detect the powerful power in them, a power even more powerful than the Golden Eagle warrior. Nahuatl closed his eyes, opened them, and felt the heartbeat pounding against his ribs inside his chest. There were exclamations one after another behind him, and the White Eagle warriors following him were shouting out uncontrollably. There was even a young man who was so surprised that he forgot to control his strength and fell from the air. Fortunately, his companions swooped down quickly and pulled him up, preventing a tragic accident. Nahuatl turned back, stared at his followers with stern eyes, and ordered with a straight face. These are guests with great power. We must respect, respect, respect like gods. If I find someone a little disrespectful, I will tear off his wings, deprive him of his power, and let him walk back on his own. The White Eagle warriors nodded vigorously. Nahuatl contracted his wings slightly and circled 3 times in the air with his followers, making sure that the opponent had discovered him before slowly flying down. Landing far away, a white deer was already running towards the opposite side. The young man on the white deer smiled solemnly and reservedly, jumped down to the ground, and stretched out his hands to them. I'm Gretel Nordmark. As agreed, I brought reinforcements here. Are you here to lead the way? It's been a long journey. Do you need to rest for a day or 2 before leaving? Dear son of God, Nutvar said, stroking his chest and saluting. Greed heard the high and low laughter behind him, but he couldn't help but feel angry. He could only listen to him continue with a straight face. The army of white ghosts has begun to climb the plateau and is approaching our royal capital. If possible, we hope that all distinguished guests can set off immediately. You heard it, let's go immediately, a thunderous voice shouted from behind. Swish, 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 there were people flying up from all directions, rushing towards that huge existence. Then, Nutvar opened his eyes in horror. Day by day, the sky stood up. Or maybe the lake stood up. Around the thing that was lying quietly on the ground and was even larger than a giant whale, wings or lake-like things were spread out, one by one, slowly standing up. Stand up, fly around, gather on the back of the giant whale, and spread out diagonally in a regular manner. When they stand up, there is a faint blue light flowing on them, like the morning light in the sky, and like the sparkling sea waves, directly reflecting the blazing skylight. And when the long wind blows from the sea, the spread wings or the standing lake surface will soon be filled forward by the wind. Then, the giant whale opened its mouth. The crowds flying around threw themselves into its mouth one after another without fear and disappeared. I'm going over to Gretel walked to White Deer, turned back again, and stretched out his arm to the gray-haired golden eagle warrior. Expand it, draw a half circle, and lead in the direction of the airship. Are you and your subordinates coming together? Taking an airship is much less laborious than flying by yourself. Nutvar took a step back, then another step. He subconsciously opened his eyes and shook his head quickly. No, no need, I will fly by myself, no. Lord Shenzi. Don't go there. I will protect you. Such a huge beast. Such a huge beast, covering the entire sky or lake. 20 or 30 people with powerful auras, similar to him or stronger than him, were all swallowed up in one gulp, without even the slightest movement. What would happen if it swallowed it up in one gulp? He rushed forward with all his strength, trying to stop Gretel and protect the youngest son of the god of thunder, the lord of plague, who was crucial to them. However, Greet smiled at him, and a wisp of breeze surrounded the white deer, turning lightly in one direction and brushing against his fingertips. With the sound of hoofbeats, the Lord of Plague was quickly thrown into the mouth of the giant whale. Dear Golden Eagle Warrior, please lead the way for us. You fly in front and guide the direction, and we will follow. A bit familiar, but amplified many times, a loud and somewhat distorted sound came from the head of the giant whale. Nutvar breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, the Plague Lord is still alive now. He waved his arms to the warriors behind him, flapped his wings, and rose into the air. Fly. Let's fly faster. Lead the way for our distinguished guests. The capital is waiting for us. However, no one responded to him. 10 white eagle warriors, including the youngest guy who had fallen headlong before, stood firmly on the ground, eyes wide open, and their 10 mouths were big enough for butterflies to fly into. Oh my god, it's flying. My god, the eagle god, this giant beast can actually fly. No, it's not a giant beast, this is a city, a floating city. I once thought that a city floating on the sea was already incredible. To be precise, the airship has not started flying at this time, but slowly, floats upward. The light sail on the top is fierce, and the wind is full of wind. Around the hull, countless strange lines begin to flow, the brilliance is radiating, and it cannot be looked at. One person is high, 2 people are high, 3 people are high, 1 tree is high, 2 trees are high. There was a crashing sound, and Nutvar didn't see any changes, but it was obvious that some kind of connection between this giant beast and the earth was gradually disconnected. It swayed a bit and began to move forward slowly, following the long wind. Even slowly, when its shadow falls overhead, it looks like a city slowly rolling over. Just standing on the ground, with the shadow occupying the entire field of vision, makes me feel breathless and oppressive. Fly! Fly! The shouts of the golden eagle warrior woke up his subordinates. Don't be dazed. Fly in front of it. Do you want to be crushed to death by it? The white eagle warriors flapped their wings vigorously and began to take off. They carefully distanced themselves, trying to stay as far away from the terrifying monster as possible. However, even so, as long as you fly a little slower and get swept up by the air current near the monster. Ah! I'm going to hit you. I'm going to fall. The monster slowly climbed up, slowly moved forward, slowly rose to the plateau, and flew in the direction guided by the golden eagle warrior. While Nutvar was trying to fly, he was full of worry and looked back from time to time. Being able to control such a huge monster, the people called by the youngest son of the god of thunder, wouldn't they be strong enough to challenge the eagle god, right? Did I make a mistake by leading them to the capital? Now, I can change the direction and lead them directly to the white ghost. Is it still too late? Amid the worries of the old soldier, the airship seemed to move slowly but actually quickly. In just 3 days, it passed over the undulating plateaus and the arid Gobi Desert, casting its reflection into a clear lake. No force can stop the people of the Eagle Country from running outside and looking up. A huge thing like mountains and cities passed through the clouds, moved forward slowly, and stopped above their heads. Nivis, the Magic Council, at the invitation of your country, is here to support us. There are still 65 monthly votes left to reach 1,000 votes. Cat, is it possible to get 1,000 votes today? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 3,000 starting coins reward. Thanks to @Iama for the 100 starting coins. Pia new book by the same author. Why did the husband run away? My name is Lin Bei. Because the fortune teller said that I have a pure yang body and excellent spiritual roots. I am destined to be in trouble and will easily be missed by female monks and die unexpectedly. So I have been dragging myself for 18 years, and everyone in the world thinks I am beautiful. But when I was 18 years old, the leader of the demon cult took me into the demon cult and got married. Rumor has it that the leader of the demon cult is a big devil who does all kinds of evil and is bloody and cruel. That day, I broke into the daughter of the leader of the demon cult. She turned out to be a female devil. The world doesn't even know. If your husband looks at her again, I will dig out his eyes. The woman smiled as brightly as a flower. Many female mainstream authors. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 988. The airship moved forward slowly. Skimming through forests, across plateaus, across lakes. When flying over the plateau lake and hearing the capital is just ahead, almost all the free magicians rushed out and stuck to the porthole to watch. Wow! Gentle exclamations and admirations came and went. The older magicians were relatively calm, such as the well-informed Archmage Baebo, who only opened his eyes slightly. Young magicians, such as Gretel. Gretel, don't wipe the porthole with your nose. No. Don't press your face against the porthole. Gretel turned a deaf ear. He focused wholeheartedly, lying on the porthole overlooking the lake, and praised in a low voice. It's so beautiful, the indigenous people here can actually build such a building, such a city. The picture scroll unfolding under your feet can no longer be described as just building or city. On the plateau, tall and steep mountains form a large circle, embracing the clear lake in the center. The shadows of the peaks are reflected in the lake, and the tops of the mountains are covered with snow in the distance. From the surrounding mountains, countless clear streams merge into rivers, which in turn flow into lakes. Along the edges of the rivers, clusters of villages are scattered. In the center of the lake stands the capital of the Eagle Kingdom or the Royal City. The Royal City does not have walls, or in other words, it does not need walls. The rippling lake water around it naturally forms its barrier. In the center of the barrier stands an island that is half made by nature and half by manpower. A wide and flat road traverses the center of the island. At the end of the road, stands a large-scale temple. Even when looking down from an airship, one is amazed at the scale of the temple. 3 flat causeways connect the island to the mainland. Between the islands and the mainland, and in the dotted canals, thousands of canoes gathered and dispersed like clouds, and moved as lightly as butterflies. Long elevated water channels transport clear mountain water from distant mountains directly to the city center. Greet lay on the porthole and opened his eyes wide. There is actually an elevated water channel here. I thought it was only in ancient Rome, no, only in the old world. Yes, Archmage Vickers of the Alchemy Guild stood beside him, looking down together with sighs in his tone. I thought that only the Glory Holy City and a few places in the Kingdom of Brolin had elevated aqueducts. I didn't expect that the indigenous people here could actually build such huge buildings. But this means that the local spellcasters do not have the power related to water creation. Archmage Mansfield of the Conjuration Department came over to chat. Otherwise, with such a big lake, there shouldn't be such a shortage of water that we need to build a canal. Perhaps it's because of the climate problem in this place. Greet continued to wipe the portholes with the grease from the tip of his nose, looked at it for a while, then lowered his head and pointed to the lake. The swaying reeds stretched inward from the shore of the lake, lower and thinner. Further inside, large areas of land are exposed, with a little green entwined on them, feebly rimming the earth. There is a circle of houses poking around the island, all built on swaying high poles. They seem to be 5 to 6 meters, 7 to 8 meters, or 10 meters away from the ground. This is a plateau area with strong evaporation, and the depth of the lake water will change greatly throughout the year. If there is a difference between the rainy season and the dry season, the changes will be even greater. When the water level is at its highest in the rainy season, these houses may be next to the water side. Just like when a colleague came back from a trip, he talked about it and told him about the Tunnel Sap Lake. It covers an area of 2,700 square kilometers in the dry season and 10,000 square kilometers in the rainy season. The residents there live on boats all year round. It's not that they want to live, but living on a boat is the best solution for them and the cost of living is the lowest. That makes sense. Archmage Mansfield nodded. He looked at the mountains in the distance, then at the elevated aqueduct that led directly to the city center, to the temples and palaces, and nodded happily. Poor people bend down to draw water from the mud, noble people want to drink the cool snow water in the mountains. No wonder such a building is built. After looking around for a while, he suddenly walked quickly towards the front cabin. Soon, the Archmage's continuous orders came from the operating area in front. Measure. Measure quickly. The shore of this lake, what range it reaches in the rainy season, and what range it reaches in the dry season. Look at the plants and soil moisture. Do you need me to tell you? Measure the height of the surrounding mountains. Measure the depth of the lake. Measure the surrounding energy nodes. The energy response of the temple and palace. Speed up. We'll be at the palace soon. The airship operator was so yelled at that he was furious. They were adjusting the magic arrays one by one and recording strings of data. They were so busy that they wished everyone could grow 8 arms. Greet smiled knowingly and stared down. Such a civilization, even if it is backward, even if it is barbaric, even if it still retains the custom of human sacrifice, but it is still brilliant and unique enough. It can die out in natural evolution, or be destroyed by attacks among indigenous people, just like in nature, wild wolves hunt doe, and snow leopards hunt blue sheep. However, it should never be brutally plundered, burned, destroyed without a trace because of the greed of a more advanced civilization. Its people were enslaved, its temples were torn down, and all its records were either burned or trampled into the mud. Even the lakes were drained of water and filled with land, completely destroying the ecology. Just as he was thinking this, a vast golden light suddenly appeared in the temple in the distance. Greet narrowed his eyes reflexively, and then he heard the high-pitched chirping of an eagle, which reached into the sky and stung him so much that he couldn't help but cover his ears. And the golden light rose, and gradually solidified, turning into a huge golden eagle, suspended above the temple. Spreading its wings, the falling shadow suddenly covered the entire royal capital. Under the wings, thousands of people prostrate themselves on the ground and cheered like thunder. Eagle God! Eagle God! The great eagle God! It flapped its wings gently, and the golden light shone on the lake, stretching for hundreds of miles. Under the Golden Eagle, another group of black energy rushed up, hovered over the Great Pyramid, and appeared. Black matter and white chapters alternate between rings. Although the body is only twice as tall as the Great Pyramid, the tail is not sure how long it is. Half virtual and half real, submerged into the ground, while the snake was hesitating, there were faint black clouds rising one by one. God of Eagles, God of Snakes, Archmage Baebo and Archmage Haines of Black Crow Swamp stood side by side, looking at each other with solemn expressions. It's fine if the negotiation goes smoothly, but if the negotiation breaks down, these two totem gods will undoubtedly be the ones to take the lead. The Eagle God is probably between level 18 and 19. Silently, Archmage Baebo had opened a spiritual connection and communicated with Haines. If you use some secret method to forcibly raise it, you can output about 19 levels of power. However, it should not cause a qualitative change and reach a legendary level. The Snake God is a little lower, weak at level 18, and can be as weak as level 19 at most. Haines replied quietly with a straight face. The key is that this is their territory. We are far away and have no backup, so we must be cautious. What do you mean? First find out their strength. And we must let the Eagle God and Snake God, or at least the Eagle God, join us and attack with all our strength. Just what I wanted. After the two archmages finished talking, one went to talk to his subordinates and arrange tasks, while the other rushed into the front cabin and drove the operators into a frenzy. Record the target's strength, record the nature of the force, record the changing waveform. In short, make full use of all the equipment on the airship, be sure to collect enough information, and be the first to detect enemy aircraft. Halfway through the scanning and detection work, the dark shadow of the Snake God on the Great Pyramid gradually shrank and disappeared into the pyramid. The Golden Eagle spread its wings, circled 3 times on the island, gave a long cry, and slowly turned into golden light, falling into the pyramid on the other side. After a moment, a speck of light flew up from the pyramid, but it was the Golden Eagle warriors and a group of White Eagle warriors who flew over to greet them. The leader, wearing an eagle helmet and long brilliant feathers, saluted forward with an obsidian spear in his hand. Before he could open his mouth, he was staggered by the air current outside the airship. He flapped his wings and had to step back 3 meters, and then another 3 meters. He finally stabilized his body and conveyed loudly. Distinguished guests, the Great Eagle God, the Great Serpent God, and the respected Trotoani and Chiwakoto are waiting for you. He turned and flew towards the island. The airship followed unhurriedly until it reached the edge of the island, then slowly descended and stopped at a height of more than 10 meters above the water. The hatch opened, and Archmage Baebo and Archmage Haines stepped out of the air, shaking out a flying carpet outside the hatch. The other archmages stood quietly and watched. Only Gretel was waved by the senior brother and called to his side. Hey, the youngest son of the God of Thunder. Don't be in a daze. Come with me. Yes, you are the Lord of Plagues. Archmage Haines also waved to him, and as expected, he received a roll of the eyes. A layer of flames faintly rose up on senior brother Burbo's body. Greet shrunk his neck, looked straight, and stood behind his senior brother without even looking at the necromancer. His feet sank slightly, but Sarala also jumped up. Let's go. Let's go together. The two archmages, the knights they each brought to protect them, Gretel and Sarala rode on the flying carpet and meandered forward. When he landed on the altar in front of the temple, a large group of people were already standing there waiting for him. The leader, wearing an eagle-shaped gold crown and holding a gold scepter studded with precious stones, walked out from among the crowd and opened his arms to them. Dear guests, on behalf of the Great Eagle God and the Great Snake God, I welcome you. White ghosts are trampling on our land, and traitors are killing our people. The Eagle country is in urgent need of you. Help. There are still 26 votes left to reach 1,000 votes. At least today, let me reach 1,000 votes. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 989. The glorious Holy See is also our enemy. The two parties sat down separately in front of the statue. Archmage Baebo sat at the head of his side and picked up the drink brought by the maid, red, purple, turbid, exuding a fresh and sweet smell. He didn't drink it, just held it in his hand and got straight to the point. So, we are willing to fight side by side with your country and fight against the invaders. Please tell me, how far is the war progressing now? The leaders of the Eagle Nation looked at each other. Finally, the man wearing a golden crown and holding a golden staff, who called himself Trotoani, coughed and took up the topic. They launched an unprecedented offensive. Those white ghosts gathered the traitors around them and launched an army of hundreds of thousands to attack us. Now, their army has climbed to the plateau and is marching towards the capital. I need a map. It would be best to have a real-time, dynamic map with terrain and landforms marked. The armies of both sides are marked with red and blue colors. You can hit it with one click of the mouse. Greed faced forward upright, his eyes were distracted, and he complained silently. Archmage Baebo obviously also wanted to complain. However, as the main talker, he had to maintain his demeanor and said calmly, "We need more detailed intelligence. Topography, landforms, number of enemies, who are the masters of the enemy. With this information, we can go out with you to jointly annihilate the enemy." Of course, Trotoani nodded repeatedly. He raised his hand, and two white eagle warriors turned out from the corner of the hall and carried up a huge wooden frame. On the soil in the wooden frame, red, white, blue, and thin lines of various colors crisscrossed each other. Gretel wanted to give up after just one glance. "You call this a map? Is this a map? There is already a lot of soil. Do you dare to just make a sand table?" Archmage Baebo frowned slightly. He waved his hand casually, and the large blue area near the royal city was immediately covered with waves, rippling slightly. "Is this the lake around us?" "Yes." With another wave, the soil rose and a small viaduct was erected in the air. "Is this the mountain next to it?" "Yes." "Here, are they all mountains?" "Damn it, this aboriginal map is too crude, it's better to just launch the airship and scan everywhere." Greed was complaining in his mind while peeking at his senior brother from time to time. On the collar of Archmage Baebo, an opal lapel pin as big as the heart of the ocean glows slightly. As the body moves, the arc-shaped, cross-star-shaped and strip-shaped light bands are constantly changing. Around the cat's eye, a circle of fine diamonds flickering brightly and dimly. Gretel always felt that the lapel pin was a scanner. Not only could it capture images of the sand table and faces of people in the hall, but it might also have recordings. It could also scan the power and transmit it back to the airship. His feeling was right. This magical device, which has solidified a series of magics such as the secret eye and has the functions of photography, sound transmission, and scanning, is transmitting every movement in the hall back to the airship. At this moment, a group of magicians gathered in the hall of the airship, all talking. "This map is too rough. In the parliamentary army, whoever dares to command a war with such a rough map will be beaten to death by the superiors. Why don't we just use magic to sweep around? Send the invisible servant out, fly around with the secret eye, and the surrounding terrain will be there. Wake up, without the support of the mage tower, the invisible servant cannot fly hundreds of miles, or should we find a magic node to stop the ship? Everyone, be quiet. The Archmage will discuss it with them." Next to Archmage Baebo, Archmage Heinz's bone-white robe was also fluttering gently, and from time to time a bit of pale color floated up from the surface of the dark fabric. If there were any ghosts buried in the bone robe, Greet would not be surprised at all by helping scan the records. He looked around, quietly turned on detection magic, and input everything he saw in his meditation vision into his meditation core. Let that light person, oh no, let that neuron computer store, analyze, and process. In short, record as much as you can. Everyone is constantly discussing, analyzing, communicating, and exchanging information. The eyes of the eagle god and the snake god overlook the temple, and in a place that cannot be seen by human eyes or heard by human ears, two consciousnesses are communicating rapidly. These people here are very strong, very strong. Yes, it's too strong, hiss, I feel that they can cause damage to me, that person with similar power to you can hurt me, hiss, that person with power similar to mine, if he swallows me, he will become stronger. Kick them away. It's too late, it's too late. To drive them away now, we need to use all our strength, hiss, my hunch is that the white ghosts are more vicious than them and will destroy us and kill us and them. Let's talk. Give them the gold and jewelry promised earlier, give them whatever they want, but keep them away, must stay away. As soon as the god had an idea, the golden eagle warrior and the female snakes immediately received the order. Soon, baskets of gold, silver, and jewelry were delivered to the steps of the main hall. Trottoani stood up and pointed at the door with his golden staff. Distinguished guests, according to the previous agreement, we will use a life-size golden statue as a reward for your participation in the battle. This is the first batch of gold to prove our sincerity. In addition, we have a small request. He faced the bottom of the temple, his eyes far away, as if he were overlooking the thousands of people in the kingdom, feeling their fear and sorrow. The behemoth you are riding on is so huge that it frightens the people of the Eagle Country for no reason. In order to appease them, can you please move the behemoth to another place? The two archmages exchanged glances. Greet quietly pricked up his ears, it seemed, as if he heard something. He listened carefully and shook his head, but still didn't hear anything. With a sideways glance, the long bone edges and skin on the side of Sirara's cheek flashed away, returning to the shape of pointed elf ears. Obviously, she heard something just now. Promise him. Promise him. Let us choose our own place. There was a lot of shouting in the airship. Archmage Mansfield, who was presiding over the discussion, made a whisper gesture, lit up the magic tool matching the opal lapel pin, and whispered a few words. Archmage Baebo nodded calmly. We are here to assist you, not to disturb your peace. Of course you can move if you want, but dash. But first, we need to choose the place ourselves, Archmage Heinz added coldly with a swollen white face. Secondly, we hope that you will show enough sincerity. There is a magician in our school who was illegally imprisoned by your country for half a year and suffered great losses. You should compensate for this. All eyes fell on Chiwakato. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the old woman breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly agreed. Of course, of course. In this matter, the female snake Nilka acted recklessly. She has already been punished, she was revoked from the title of female snake, deprived of the gift of the snake god, and demoted to a mid-level priestess. She carefully observed the words and expressions of Archmage Heinz. However, a senior necromancer was deeply entangled with death, and she couldn't tell her mood just by looking at her face. She paused and said cruelly. If that mage is willing to accept it, we can send her over as his maid. Huh. Gretel quickly perked up his ears. If Lin En was in front of him, he would have to make some jokes, saying that his luck is not over yet. But forget it if he's not here. That female snake has a bad personality and doesn't have a clear mind. It's best not to send it here. I hope the Archmage will block it for him. No. Archmage Heinz said coldly. He turned his gaze and looked at the condor statue on the upper right, his gaze profound. Gretel was in a trance, and even felt that he saw the soul of the eagle god through the statue. When the mage was imprisoned, his magic pet desperately escaped and reported to him for help. During the escape, he was attacked and a piece of his boss was torn off. Light rose up in his hand, and the image of Mr. Trochka appeared. Before talking about aid and fighting side by side, we hope that your country can return the parts that were taken from it and make it whole again. Neither the Golden Eagle leader nor Chiwakoto nor Trotoani dared to answer this request. The leaders stood up and knelt before the statue and prayed lowly. For a moment, a large golden light suddenly lit up on the statue of the eagle god. My god said that when he noticed a strange creature running away, he personally attacked and tore off a piece of the thing. But the thing that was torn off was not big. After swallowing it, it has disappeared and cannot be spit out. What? Greet sat upright suddenly. Can't spit it out? If you can't spit it out, what should Mr. Trochka do? Was this injury just in vain? My god said that he can repair the power of the aberration, but it will require a lot of his divine power. Currently, he hopes to do this after the war is over, so as not to affect the battle against the White Ghost. What? Do you want to delay it until after the war? Do you want to regret it? Gretel, what do you think? Gretel, what do you think? In the spiritual connection, 2 consecutive inquiries came. Greet turned his head, and Archmage Baebo and Archmage Heinz looked at him at the same time, with a look of inquiry in their eyes. What? Ask me? Shouldn't I ask Lin? Gray calmed down and realized that he was the person Lin N was following. On this occasion, he was the one who could make the decision for Lin N. He took a deep breath, his face became serious, and he asked back through the spiritual connection. I don't really want to agree, will they treat Mr. Trochka's treatment as a bargaining chip in negotiations? If they don't agree to the conditions, they won't be treated. Oh, don't worry about that, Archmage Baebo replied lightly. We can still suppress these 2 indigenous gods. If you don't agree, we'll give them a beating. Greet, just choose the one you want. It reached 1,000 votes yesterday. The cat is happy. Hope to get 2,000 votes this month. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 990. Aren't you afraid that he will default on his debt? Can he be beaten to death even if he refuses to pay? Gretel's eyes lit up. Ah, it's so good to have a backer, and it's so good to have a big boss to take care of everything. You can't go wrong no matter what you choose, and no matter what you choose, someone will ensure that you can get enough benefits. It's such a good life. If only he had enough force points before, he wouldn't have to fight with people endlessly, and he could go directly to the Eagle Kingdom and slap the table, let them go or not, I will destroy you if I don't let them go. In this case, there is no need for him to see the results immediately, so as to reduce the team's strategic options. Greet leaned back relaxedly, with the corners of his eyes slightly curved, and nodded to his senior brother and Archmage Heinz. I think we should listen to the opinions of Brother Lin and Mr. Trochka. It's up to you to decide, Archmage Heinz replied immediately. After a pause, he added. Don't worry, if that guy Lin N has any objections, let him come to me. Isn't this what you mean by asking me to make the decision for Lin? But well, according to the unspoken rules among magicians, the magician being followed is fully qualified to decide these things for the follower. Greet took a deep breath and raised a smile. In this case, it's up to you two to decide. No matter what, don't affect this war and don't cause losses to our team. Of course. Look at me, I will definitely force them to fight. Gretel nodded with a smile, leaned back, and sat upright, assuming the posture of "I'm just here to show off, I'll let the boss decide everything," listening to Senior Brother and Archmage Hines arguing with each other. One had a red face and the other had a white face. The Eagle God and the Snake God who are forcing them, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, in short, when they fight head-on, no matter what, they must fight with all their strength. One of the two great masters presented the facts and reasoned openly, while the other sullenly made sarcastic comments from time to time. One body is steaming with heat, and there is boundless light and heat ready to explode in the hall at any time. The other body has a faint black air, and the distance between it and the netherworld is no less than that of the snake god. One speaks softly but with a hint of toughness, but refuses to give in. The other can explode and flip the table anytime and anywhere. There are also great mages in the airship scanning and analyzing, providing materials and negotiation strategies anytime and anywhere. Within a few rounds, the two sides finalized a combat plan. First, the Golden Eagle Warriors led the White Eagle Warriors to conduct a large-scale exploration and provide accurate information. The magicians concealed their identities and followed the team quietly to verify the authenticity of the information. After confirming the opponent's main force, the Eagle God and the Snake God will lead their own masters into battle, assisted by Archmage Baebo and Archmage Hines. Concentrate superior forces and defeat the opponent's masters at once. After wiping out the top combat forces, the warriors of the Eagle Kingdom will be responsible for destroying the opponent's mid and low-level combat forces. The magicians and warriors of the council patrol various battlefields and provide timely support. That's it. With Greet's eyes blank and letting his meditation core record the quarrels, the negotiation finally came to a conclusion. On the first and second days, we will conduct a large-scale reconnaissance. If everything goes well, on the third day, we will catch them all. Alfonso Cortez was a little frightened. He always felt something was wrong. The advance had been going smoothly before, taking in hundreds of thousands of troops around them and advancing to the bottom of the plateau in one go. On the way to climb the plateau, it is normal to encounter resistance. The indigenous army died in waves, and the corpses filled the mountain road. Although those warriors were bare-chested, with their faces and bodies painted in various colors, and covered in animal skins, it was hard for him to call them an army unintentionally. However, after fierce attack and defense and paying a sufficient price, they finally broke into the first pass. Then, the resistance intensity of the Eagle Kingdom suddenly decreased. It turns out that there are 3 or 4 golden eagles circling overhead every day, leading dozens of white eagle warriors. In the past few days, the golden eagles and white eagles have disappeared. There are only some black eagle warriors, leading ordinary natives, fighting and retreating. They are afraid of us, the leader of the indigenous city-state, the leader who married his daughter to his deputy, beat his chest and declared excitedly. They have never seen such an offensive. The steel sword that can cut off obsidian, the monster that spits fire from its belly, the thunder falling from the sky, they must be afraid. Fight it, hit Tenok, break the eagle wings of God. They must have fallen ill in large numbers. Archbishop Teramo's robes were fluttering, and he was riding on a horse, with the golden threads on his robes sparkling. The warhorse walked on the rugged mountain road with 1 foot high and 1 foot low, but it did not prevent him from sitting firmly. Such a large-scale smallpox, we were prepared in advance and mobilized a large number of priests and holy water to spread our faith among the indigenous people. How can the healing power of the evil god compare to ours? After so long, death, it's normal to lose half of the people. Maybe an important person died. Alfonso's advisor and think tank, Pedro Varadu, rode beside the deputy governor and carefully guessed. Their power structure is very strange, the golden eagle leader, the female snake and the talker. If the important talker and nobles die, it is normal for the golden eagle warriors to rush back to the capital to compete for status. Deputy Governor Alfonso was silent. He always felt that things were not that simple. However, Several powerful pirates had already passed him cheering and rushed forward. Forward, forward. Score into Tanakh. Enter the royal capital of the Eagle Kingdom. Take the Eagle God back to the exhibition. Take the Snake Girl back to warm the bed. Deputy Governor Alfonso was helpless. Although these pirates are villains, scum, and bastards who would die 10,000 times, he still has to rely on them anyway. Commanding them is better than commanding those damn natives. Until now, he hasn't figured out how many indigenous people there are. Is it 50,000? 100,000? Or 500,000? Anyway, they are all over the mountains and plains, occupying every corner. Running, screaming, sleeping, and shitting everywhere he could and couldn't see. Fortunately, there was no need for him to provide food, so Deputy Governor Alfonso just went with them. He carefully gathered his core soldiers, the escort knights, and walked with the guards of the Archbishop of Teramo. Then send someone to call those pirates. Stay in formation. Stay in formation. Beware of attacks at any time. Be careful. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. Archbishop Teramo suddenly raised his head and grasped the holy emblem on his chest. The heavy holy emblem made of gold and studded with diamonds released thousands of rays of brilliance, shooting straight upward. There was an eagle's cry and a sharp sound of wind, quickly swooping down from the highest to the far distance. The holy emblem's light shot out, and the sound of wind turned slightly to one side, avoiding the holy light, but still grabbed him on the head. Seeing that the wind was about to reach the top of his head, and exclamations arose from all sides, Archbishop Teramo calmed down, grasped the holy emblem, and prayed in a low voice. "My Lord." A thin layer of white light enveloped him. The protective shield cast by the 18th level Archbishop appears to be thin, but is extremely tough. The eagle composed of golden light swooped down at high speed and hit the light shield with its head, but failed to break it. However, his sharp claws and steel beak have deformed and flowed on the light mask as if they were melted. It screamed sadly and struggled to take off, but Archbishop Teramo raised his eyes slightly and groaned. "Death by law." Boom. The feathers exploded, and golden light flowed everywhere. The Archbishop reached forward and held a ball of golden light, with a slight smile on his face. He raised his head to the sky, stared at the golden light hovering in the sky, took a deep breath, and continued to pray. "My Lord, you are the light in the sky, and you are the holiness in the world. Everything in the world is illuminated by your brilliance." Before him, behind him, to his left and to his right, the priests bowed their heads and prayed in unison. The sound spread throughout the country, and even the nervous Deputy Governor Alfonso felt moved. He couldn't help but jump off his horse and pray to the ground. "My Lord, you are the greatest, you are the highest." A layer of white light emerged from Archbishop Teramo. Dots of white light all around him merged into him and gradually turned into a huge ball of light. The ball of light condensed, shrank, and finally turned into an angel with 6 wings on its back. He raised his head and looked around, drew his sword and pointed upward. The hawk's cry was sharp, as if it were furious. The golden light in the sky expanded, expanded, expanded to the limit, and cast a huge shadow on the ground. In the sky, the sun hung high, and all the blazing sunlight seemed to be absorbed by the golden feathers. Finally, the golden light suddenly shrank and turned into a huge golden eagle, rushing down at high speed. The angel swung his lightsaber, and a ray of condensed white light shot upwards. It was snapped by the golden eagle's wings. Eagle God. Did it take action directly? Deputy Governor Alfonso exclaimed. Archbishop Teramo lowered his eyebrows and lowered his head with a calm expression. Quiet. This evil god has usurped my lord's power and must be restrained by my lord. Pray with all your heart. He has been on top of people for a long time, and when he gives orders, he naturally has the power to convince people. The surrounding knights, soldiers, and even pirates all fell silent and prayed after him in unison. My lord, you are the light in the sky, and all the brilliance in the world belongs to you, there is no brilliance that is not under your control. The flames on the seraph's body were as fierce as burning, and they waved their lightsabers to block the eagle god from high in the sky. However, as he prayed and prayed, the light flowing around him suddenly dimmed. Didn't the teachings change? That's right, there seemed to be two kinds of light. The magician discovered them first. Vice-Governor Alfonso heard such whispers. It seemed that someone was whispering to each other, and it seemed that he himself thought so too. During this moment of distraction, Archbishop Teramo suddenly raised his head, stretched his hands outward, and pushed out with all his strength. Pagan! A ball of blazing flame fell into the crowd. The extreme brightness and extreme heat instantly disrupted the entire square array. On the mountaintop in the distance, a mage patted the sunstone powder off his palm and blew gently. Yang Yan explosion. Today, the tightening was suddenly tightened again. From today on, we will continue to do nucleic acid tests for 3 consecutive days, and we require each household to be tested. Shivering. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 991. Sun Flame Explosion, 8-ring magic, energy evocation system. Belonging to light and fire, the explosion is powerful. Archbishop Teramo was still shocked. He spread his arms slightly wider than shoulder width, pushed forward and upward, and kept praying. My lord, I praise you, you are almighty, you are all in all, we are protected by you and we can survive all crises safely. Yanjian explosion is a pure magician method, and the person who comes here must be at least a level 15 or above archmage, or higher. But no matter what, as an 18th level golden-robed archbishop, he is not afraid of this spell. Fire attacks can be isolated as long as the barrier is strong enough. Light attacks, are the servants of the Lord of Glory afraid of any light attacks? The Seraph's lightsaber raised up and slashed towards the fireball. In his left hand, a radiant shield appeared, extending outward and deforming, covering the heads of the people around him. From himself, to the bishop around him, to Deputy Governor Alfonso, they were firmly covered. Boom! Fireballs exploded overhead. Unprecedented pressure poured down, and the light shield swayed before holding on steadily. Archbishop Teramo breathed a sigh of relief, and just as he was about to continue praying, he felt that his eyes, hands, and all exposed skin were all burning. I looked down and saw blisters on the back of my hands. He moved his fingers slightly, white light passed by, and the blisters on the back of his hand disappeared quietly. I clenched my fist and stretched it, but I always felt it was still burning inside. However, others did not have such strong healing ability as him, and the wailing sounds could be heard from high to low in the formation. Pain. It hurts. Hiss. My eyes dash. This light shield, which was propped up by collective prayers, began to disintegrate with this wave of attacks. Archbishop Teramo suddenly raised his head, and there were dots of stars on the edge of the light shield, and a large area had drifted out. The people below were screaming, falling to their knees, rolling. Wrong. There is something different in this Yang Yan explosion, it is not as simple as standard magic. Who is coming? His mind was spinning rapidly, and he went through the masters on the Vatican's wanted list one by one, from legend to below. At the same time, he lowered his head to pray again. If you can't handle someone yourself, don't worry about it. Be careful of the other party's next attack. The Eagle God is still watching from above. Senior brother, what's in your Yang Yan explosion? Greet stood behind Archmage Baebo, looking around. During this battle, the senior brother specially brought him here, saying that he wanted to see the world. Of course, there are conditions for seeing the world. You have to write a paper when you go back. Hey, you discovered ultraviolet rays before, so I thought about adding ultraviolet rays to the Yanjian explosion. Archmage Baebo smiled extremely proudly, patted the sunstone powder on his hand, and took out a new one. Gem. Later, when Sirara was helping in the Star Dome, she discovered new rays, right? Thank you very much, Sirara. He nodded to the silver dragon girl behind Gretel. I added these rays one by one to the Yanjian explosion, strengthening and amplifying it. The new spell I constructed does not consume more, is much more lethal, and is concealed. They can't guard against the light shield of the glorious Holy See. My new ray. This is the power of technology. Greet also laughed. What the senior brother added was strong ultraviolet light that had been super doubled by the spell. The other one might be gamma rays, or a more troublesome ray. In short, they are all invisible and without trace. If they want to defend against the spells of the glorious Holy See, they must either have sufficient knowledge of the types of light and develop corresponding spells, or they must rely on good luck. Senior brother, are you going down? What's the hurry? Archmage Baebo raised his chin and clicked on the following formation. As agreed, I will tear through their defenses, and the killing will depend on the Eagle God. Do you really expect me to work in vain? As he spoke, a ball of golden light exploded inside the light shield. Following the cracks torn open by the Yangyan explosion, dots of golden feathers floated into the light shield from the sky, shooting out in all directions. Some turned into little golden eagles, pounced on people's faces, scratched their beaks with their claws, and scratched their faces until their faces were bloody. Some lengthened and stretched, turning into sharp blades, which cut through people's necks and arms, causing streams of blood to flow out. There were still some that couldn't break through the defense, so they exploded with a bang, and thousands of golden lights were like thorns, piercing the surroundings. The attack power is still a bit weak, Archmage Baebo murmured. Those golden feathers are pretty good. I'll pick them up some other day and play with them. I have a hunch that using these golden feathers to release the Yang Flame explosion is much more powerful than using Sunstone. Gretel looked at him helplessly. The piece of Sunstone in Archmage Baebo's hand is orange-red in color, with bits of golden light shining inside, looking like a section of sunlight condensed inside. From a magic point of view, using this kind of gem as a spellcasting material means that the magician extracts the concept of sunlight in the gem, and then amplifies and releases it. The power of the Eagle God seems to be biased toward the sun at present. Maybe Jin, you can really use it? But, if that's the case, why not just use lasers? The killing power of lasers is much stronger than sunlight. How did you get the ruby laser generator? How can I make my senior brother understand the concept of laser and let him use ruby as a material to create a laser? While he was distracted, senior brother Baebo pointed down, and another burst of Yang flame fell. The killing effect this time was even more outstanding than last time. The seraph lowered its head, fluttered down, spread its wings, and wrapped around the archmage. With a bang, the 6 white wings had become tattered and strands floated upward. Hey, the quality of the sunstone produced in the Eagle Kingdom is much better than that of the Parliament's stock, Archmage Baebo commented happily. Whether it is because it is located on a plateau and absorbs more power from the sun, or is it because it is shrouded by the divine power of the Eagle God, this still needs to be studied. However, it can be regarded as the same acquisition material, and the sales will definitely be very good. The seraphim was severely injured, and the Eagle God no longer had any scruples. He let out a long cry and pounced in his true form. The extremely huge figure was as fast as a stream of light. In just a blink of an eye, it rushed to the top of Archbishop Teramo. The 2 high-ranking knights drew their swords at the same time. A white light, a golden light, crisscrossing, blocking upwards. The invisible golden light collided with the long sword wrapped in flames, and with a loud bang, the 2 knights fell to the sky at the same time, sinking deeply into the ground below their knees. Humph, it looks like it's only level 15 on the high cliff, Archmage Baebo complained. Without praying, without accumulating energy, you rush into battle, and dare to fight against a god. Look, it's broken, right? It's indeed broken. With such a strange posture, the tibia and fibula of the lower leg may have been comminutedly fractured, and the knee may also be ruined. As for whether there are compression fractures in the thoracic and lumbar vertebrae, the explosion just now was so fast that Gretel didn't see clearly. Fortunately, the two knights' actions effectively resisted the eagle god. Taking advantage of this gap, Archbishop Teramo lowered his head and prayed for a moment. A white light enveloped him and his personal guards, and they flew up from the ground. There were two consecutive Yang-Yan explosions just now, with a very short interval, and I was calm and relaxed. The people who come are definitely not only level 15, but probably level 17 or above. The appearance of a high-level magician above level 17 means that there is a big flaw in their plan. The Magic Council and the Eagle Kingdom are attacking from both sides. They absolutely cannot withstand it and run away. Run away quickly. Don't worry about the knights, don't worry about the soldiers, and don't worry about the pirates anymore. In the current situation, life is the most important thing, and escaping from the battlefield is victory. Escape to the seaside, escape to the warship, escape back to the Storm Islands. Oh, you escaped! Archmage Baebo clicked his tongue and jumped into the air. I don't see how he activates the spell, but the speed is unusually fast. Gretel quickly activated the dragon flying technique, and hurriedly and slowly caught up with him. After struggling for a while, when he landed again, he was already standing on the top of the hill in front of the Archbishop. Archmage Baebo looked down, raised his hand, and pressed down weakly. A large translucent force field hand flew out from around his palm, aimed at the Archbishop and his group and patted down. Boom! Smoke and dust were everywhere. Greet closed her eyes reflexively. This was too miserable. It was like swatting flies. With one slap, a group of people were slapped on the ground. The rest of the battle is basically lackluster. The God of Eagles personally went into battle, leading 6 Golden Eagle warriors and dozens of White Eagle warriors to surround the Archbishop and startle them. Amidst the screams, soon, the knights, bishops, and attendants who were guarding the Archbishop were beaten out of the crowd by their wings, or grabbed out of the crowd by eagle talons. Then, the Golden Eagle warriors and White Eagle warriors swarmed forward, several of them serving one another. Hey, there's also the leader. The leader can't escape either. Greed watched for a long time until he saw the eagle god pressing Archbishop Teramo to the ground and tearing off an arm, and then turned around. The overall situation here was decided. He stood on tiptoes and scanned the battlefield with his eyes equipped with the eagle eye spell. What about another one? Where is the leader of this team? There seemed to be a nobleman next to the Archbishop, wearing a dark red cloak, looking like a leader. Where did he go? Deputy Governor Alfonso fled desperately, surrounded by guards. While escaping, he scolded the Archbishop of Teramo. Don't take me with you if you run away. Don't even take me with you if you run away. You deserve to be caught up. Such a large group of people are flying in the air. What a perfect target. The other party is also a god who can fly. Have you ever seen an eagle in the sky with bad eyesight and unable to see its prey? There. There. The horse's hooves hit, and there was a sound of killing. Shouts shook the valley from all directions, the one protected by a group of people. He must be a big shot. Catch him. Damn it. Not an indigenous language. How many people came from the Magic Council? How did they find such a useless place? Deputy Governor Alfonso lowered his head and gave a few instructions, and the guards around him immediately divided into 3 groups and fled in 3 directions. Fortunately, there are several passages in this canyon. I'll let you chase them. I'll let you chase me. He felt that the pursuers around him had become a little thinner, and as soon as he wiped his sweat, the previous shout rang out again. The one with the red cloak. Chase him. Deputy Governor Alfonso quickly went to untie the cloak. The first one couldn't be untied, and the second one couldn't be untied. He was cruel, pulled out the sword, and cut with all his strength. The horse shook and almost cut his shoulder. The red cloak fell to the ground and was soon trampled into shape. However, not long after, the shout from above changed his words again. Catch the one in full steel armor. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 992. Deputy Governor Alfonso fled for his life. He dismissed the guards, taking only a few core and highest-ranking knights with him. He took off his red velvet cloak, threw it on the ground, and was immediately trampled without a trace. Steel armor, this, even if he wanted to take it off, he couldn't take it off quickly on the bumpy horseback. This thing, whether it is putting on or taking off, requires 2 attendants to work on it for at least half an hour. The kind that can be put on and taken off automatically. Yes, but the magic that comes with it cannot be achieved without 10 or 20,000 gold coins. What could he not do if he had 10 to 20,000 gold coins? Even if you raise attendants, you can raise 10 or 8, and they will be replaced every few years. But now it's troublesome. Deputy Governor Alfonso looked left, right, forward, and behind, but couldn't see any time to stop and take off his armor. Feathers fluttered in the sky, and spears and stones rained down. Not only that, the explosions, big and small, kept ringing out, causing people to panic. Damn heretic! They came out of nowhere. Fortunately, 2 of the knights he brought were trained by his family since childhood and were loyal enough to him. Lieutenant Governor Alfonso was lying on his horse. When he turned a corner, a cloak was thrown over him. Put it on. The gray-brown wool cloak, which was very unremarkable in color and style, almost saved his life at this time. Deputy Governor Alfonso was filled with gratitude and quickly covered his armor with the cloak and pulled up his hood. Gonzalo. Thank you. Before he finished speaking, there was another explosion in front of him. Deputy Governor Alfonso raised his head following the sound, and his face instantly turned pale. Mountain. Landslide. The mountain didn't just collapse. The entire top of the mountain folded, rumbling, rolling, and falling down, like a giant snake rolling in mud and dust. Below the giant snake, there were endless screams and screams. Run! Run! Left! 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 No, there's no way. Right. There's a cave here. At the landslide, Archmage Mansfield appeared leisurely and lightly dusted his robe. The Archmage looked down at the crowds rushing down the mountain and sighed sincerely. It's really easy for a magician to do a job like blocking a road. Without him using magic, the airship flew around in a circle, scanning the terrain and choosing the most suitable locations. The low-level ones, they are also 15th level mages, and 10th level or above high mages fly around the mountain, find the weakest point, and fill it with magic explosives. When the time is right, with an order, the explosives will detonate one after another. Where there is not enough, the magicians add more force, and rocks roll down, blocking the way. What's more important is that such a roar and such a large scale of rocks are naturally shocking and powerful. Rocks were rolling everywhere, and the pirates and indigenous soldiers below were suddenly divided into more than a dozen parts, each paying no attention to the other. The White Eagle warriors who could fly, as well as the Black Hawk warriors who had been ambushed in advance, and the low-level warriors of the Eagle Kingdom, brandished spears and stone hammers, shouted, charged down from the hillside, and charged into the crowd. Deputy Governor Alfonso fled. Gonzalo and Sandoval, 2 knights he brought from his family, one on the left and one on the right, protected him closely. Break through the panicking warriors, break through the scurrying pirates, break through the crying natives. Winding and turning, all the way to the coast. The 15th level Sky Knight and the 14th level Great Knight were like sharp knives, smoothly piercing through the crowd even in such a chaotic scene. Turned a corner, turned another corner, boom. A stalagmite rises from the ground. Deputy Governor Alfonso's reaction was not slow and he jumped away with all his strength, but the horse under him neighed and was impaled on a stone pillar. A quick glance in the midst of a busy schedule saw a beautiful female magician in a fluttering dress flying in the air in the distance, reaching out and pointing towards them. Lightless, colorless, soundless. But Deputy Governor Alfonso felt a loud bang on his head and felt dizzy. With a backhand swipe, blood flowed from the corners of the eyes, nostrils, and ears. It's the Archmage of the Sonic System. Knight Gonzalo grabbed him, held him at his waist, and quickly jumped out to the side. Knight Sandoval shouted and jumped up. The sword swung out an arc of light several feet long, heading straight for the female magician. Well. Yu sighed. The arc of light fell, and the female magician's figure disappeared like a dreamy bubble. Immediately afterwards, a faint sound of strings came from another direction. Buzz. The sound was very soft, very low, unfocused, and almost completely inaudible. But Knight Sandoval seemed to have been hit by a giant hammer, his whole body was shaken, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and smashed his head into the dust. The next moment, what filled his field of vision were 3 golden eagle warriors wielding golden scimitars, and behind them, densely packed white eagle warriors marching forward in formation. Mage Isabel stood in the dense canopy, looking down at the battle below, and sighed quietly. She wiped the Duxian Keen in her hand lovingly and took back the space bag. Why, do some people think that a magician will stand where you can see him? Which magician fights with people and doesn't throw 17 or 8 phantoms outside and hide himself tightly? Knight Gonzalo took his governor and fled. Jump up, fall down, jump up, fall again. The flexible branches hit the governor's face and hands, leaving red marks one by one. From time to time, various poisonous insects fell down, and the burrs rubbed against the skin, causing itchiness, swelling and pain. Deputy Governor Alfonso gritted his teeth and did not dare to scream. I don't know how many people are chasing you. I don't know how many golden eagle warriors and white eagle warriors were hovering in the air, waiting to catch him. The route Gonzalo took him was already the safest. Without the cover of these jungles, he would be caught if he couldn't run even a few miles away. Running, running, there was another roar ahead. The tree trunks were broken, the branches and leaves were flaring, and the heat wave was raging. Gonzalo held him with his left arm, swung his sword with his right hand, barely managed to deflect a wave of attacks, turned to the side, and charged with all his strength. My eyes were black, my feet were empty, and I was falling, falling, falling endlessly. They fell into a huge, deep cave. What the hell? Knight Gonzalo cursed loudly. He carried his deputy governor and struggled up, trying to break out of the cave. Just kidding, if you are not familiar with this place, you can break into a cave in the middle of a mountain casually. How big is this kind of cave? How many floors are there? There are several caves within caves. Which one is bigger and which one is smaller? What wild beasts are there in the cave? What poisonous snakes and insects are there? What kind of monsters are there? Are there any high-level monsters nesting here? Is there a way out of the cave? Where does it lead? Can it lead to the seaside, or will it lead to the center of the enemy? Is it through land or through underground rivers? After getting involved in the underground river, Will he be directly sucked into an unknown place? Knight Gonzalo was completely unsure. At this moment, the only way he could think of to survive was to retrace his steps and rush into the sky. With the sun above his head he could still tell the direction, but without the sun, it would be over. As a sky knight, he originally remembered clearly, turning around, flying diagonally upwards, and flying straight. At most 20 meters, it will definitely fly under the sky. But flying 10 meters after another. It was still dark in front of him. The sound of the wind rustled, and I retreated backwards. Countless stalactites and stalagmites were showing their teeth and claws in the darkness. Knight Gonzalo made 2 emergency changes in direction, broke into a cold sweat, and finally decided that he could not go on like this. Hold tight, he threw Deputy Governor Alfonso back and asked him to use his hands and feet to hug his neck and lower back. He half knelt in the air, held the sword in both hands, straightened up, and prayed in a low voice. My Lord, I praise you, I sing your praises, and I praise you. Please use your words to be a walking light in our hearts and a lamp for our feet to lead us forward and let us walk the path that pleases you. Deputy Governor Alfonso was covered in cold sweat and panting unsteadily, and he also murmured a prayer along with the knight. Amidst the prayers, white light gradually emitted from the sword blade, the armor, and the knight's hands and face, illuminating the surrounding scene. Only then did they see that a black mist was surrounding them, misty and gently stirring. In the black mist, there were vague and intricate threads, as if countless snakes were hesitating and trying to swim in silently. Fortunately, the white light was bright and tried hard to keep the black fog out. Knight Gonzalo prayed a few more words, shouted loudly, and waved his sword around him. Just hearing a cry of surprise, the black mist retreated outward like boiling water and snow, and a ray of skylight fell outside. Oops! A clear female voice whispered. Knight Gonzalo followed the sound and saw 3 thin figures standing in the darkness, with only thousands of phosphorescent lights around them indicating their existence. Seeing the black fog dissipating, the 3 of them each took a step forward and prayed loudly. Knight Gonzalo had never heard of the language of prayer, and could only guess that it might be the language of the Eagle Country. Amid the sound of prayer, there was a rustling sound everywhere, and a phosphorescent light surged forward. Knight Gonzalo glanced at him with horror. Snake. Viper. Countless venomous snakes. Long and short, black, brown, green, and red, some coiled up in a snake formation, some crawled forward, some intertwined into a ball, they were swarming forward like ocean waves. Some had gleaming scales, while some had half of their backs still illusory, spitting out snake letters, baring their fangs, and expanding their necks, surrounding them tightly from all directions. Even on the stone pillars and ceiling, there are venomous snakes circling and hanging down everywhere. Female snake. He grunted through gritted teeth. No wonder the doctrine says that snakes are devils, the devils that tempt humans to fall, and are the original devils. These female snakes should be killed. However, with his own strength, he probably wouldn't be able to kill him cleanly. Even if he could kill him cleanly, he wouldn't be sure he could protect the governor from being bitten by a snake. Knight Gonzalo took a deep breath and stamped his feet. A large piece of the ground collapsed with a crash, and he took advantage of the force of the rebound to rise up like a cannonball. Boom! Wow! Ah! Screams, cries of pain, darkness. When Knight Gonzalo came back to his senses, he found that he was standing in a huge cage, crisscrossed with pale human bones. At some point, Deputy Governor Alfonso fell off him and landed among a group of poisonous snakes. He tried his best to lean against a stone pillar, swung his protective sword, and wanted to cut off the poisonous snakes around him, but he did not notice that a poisonous snake had already hung from his head. Prison of bones. On the other side, there was a sinister voice, speaking softly in a language that Knight Gonzalo could understand. Dear Chiwakato, the rest of the matter will be left to you. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 993. The Eagle God and the Snake God are two level 18 mages. The top combat power is at least twice that of the opponent. 12 golden eagles, 7 female snakes, a group of archmages above level 15, and combat followers brought over by the magicians, one for each person, above level 15. The high-end combat power is at least twice that of the opponent. As for the low-end combat power, when the opponent's high-end combat power is overflowing, how can it be possible to overturn the situation no matter how much low-end combat power there is? In the words of Archmage Baebo, people from the glorious Holy See will know what happened when they see the spell falling. As for the natives, they follow the wind and howl, and once the situation is unfavorable, they can run faster than anyone else. With such a comparison of strength, one cannot directly defeat the opponent with overwhelming force. On the contrary, it would be extremely strange. Therefore, the magicians naturally chose the most powerful combat method. Archmage Baebo teamed up with the Eagle God, and Archmage Hines cooperated with the Snake God, each finding the strongest being in the other. Archmages above level 15 each occupy favorable positions and use powerful attack spells to change the terrain, divide and surround the enemy, and destroy the enemy's morale. As for chasing and killing on the ground, why do the archmages participate in such a rough job that will make your hands dirty? There are so many warriors in the Eagle country. The additional support of the archmages is that before the war begins, all their wooden spears, obsidian arrows, stone axes, golden knives, and heavy weapons are collectively equipped with higher demonized weapons. Then, separate a group of people to monitor the battlefield. If you are in a good mood, you will throw 2 fireballs over to help them. If you are in a bad mood, just float above and watch the show. Another group of people drove their own flying props, heading east and south from the battlefield, scanning the area one by one. Well, this area is made up of hills and grasslands. In this area, the river meanders, and there are large swamps in it. In this area, there are lush forests, small villages nearby, and scattered farmland. Arrived at the port. In the slightly concave, roughly right-angled bay, there were more than 23 mast sailboats moored, with the flag of the Kingdom of Brolin drooping dejectedly. There are also more than a dozen single-mast boats heading inland along the wide river. Right here. It's nice here. The 2 magicians who were responsible for inspecting the terrain and choosing a location for the Parliament's stronghold looked at each other. Natural ports and berths have fulfilled one of the most important conditions. The existence of inland rivers has improved the convenience of transportation and reduced transportation costs. If their common sense is correct, they can follow the winding rivers all the way to the foot of the plateau. Next to the port, a small cluster of houses has formed a natural town, and there is even a small ship repair yard. Going along the coast, if there's no other more suitable estuary, this is it. I guess this is probably the best place. Those pirates didn't choose this place for no reason. Having said that, it's better to walk around. Besides, we also need to consider the location of the Mage Tower. But the most important thing now is getting these ships. The 2 magicians nodded to each other and separated. One from the south side of the port and one from the north side of the port to outflank them. With a finger pointing, a row of vertical tornadoes on the sea rolled towards the ships on the coast. By order of the council, all crew members surrender unconditionally. A group of magicians are responsible for joining the battle, controlling the situation, chasing death to the north, and not allowing any enemy from the glorious Holy See to escape. A group of magicians are responsible for patrolling the surrounding areas, flying airships over the mountains, and using the airship facilities to scan the surrounding terrain. A group of magicians went down to the plateau, inspected the surrounding terrain, products and population, selected sites for the magician tower, and planned trade routes. And another group of magicians, such as Gretel. Wow! The way the people here farm is so amazing. Nodmark, the youngest son of Gretel Thor, the Plague Lord, and the key figure who led the magicians to the Eagle Kingdom, opened his eyes with his senior brother once, and then wandered around in the Eagle Kingdom every day. Wandering around the capital Tenok. Visit temples, palaces, markets, houses. He knelt down and held a handful of soil on the ground with his mage's hands, holding it in front of him and turning it over and over. The white eagle warrior accompanying him quickly stepped forward. Lord Son of God, this is the mud from the lake. It's dirty. Milt, Greed turned his head, walked to the edge of the field, and stepped hard on it. The edge of the field ridge is not raised soil, but a fence made of wicker, fixed with wooden stakes below. Wobbly, wobbly. This is a floating island. An artificial island fixed with wicker sticks and filled with silt. The fields are covered with green leaves, covering the ground. Not far away, there is another field with emerald green stems standing tall. What are you growing? The white eagle warrior couldn't answer either. He looked around and waved to a man wrapped in linen. Greet guessed that he might be the steward of the farm, and asked a few questions. Then, he turned to Gretel and pointed. This piece is pumpkin, this piece is corn, this is amaranth, these are beans. Gretel walked around in a big circle in front of and behind the house. I didn't see them raising pigs or sheep, only some chickens and ducks scattered in the yard, clucking. An old dog was lying outside the yard. When he saw Greet and the others approaching, he waggled his tail lazily. As for the large livestock used to plow the fields, there is even less trace of them. Well, the silt dug out from the lake probably doesn't need to be plowed either. No pigs and sheep? Then what do they eat? In addition to chickens and ducks, there must be some other meat, right? Yes, but these farmers can't eat it. Even if it's chickens and ducks, they have to pay tribute to the nobles and they can't eat it themselves. These meats are available in the market. Please follow me. What surprised Greet was that there was actually meat for sale in the market, or in other words, in the big market at the foot of the temple and in front of the palace. There are many stalls in the market, selling pottery bowls and pots, linen fabrics, straw baskets. Those who sell bird feathers, those who sell leopard skins, crocodile skins, bison skins, those who sell all kinds of small shiny stones, those who sell spices, those who sell preserved fruits. Greet even saw quite good quality sunstones, moonstones, turquoise, cat's eye stones among those small stones. Even if they are not used as spell-casting materials, it should be a good thing to buy them back to fill Sarala's collection. Each stall is a large straw mat spread on the ground. All the products are placed on the straw mat, and people squat directly in front of the stall to select. Talking in different languages, shouting, bargaining, the whole market was bustling with excitement. There was surprisingly no dust flying in the square paved with huge rocks, and there was no sewage flowing across it. Even if the products are placed on the floor, the entire market environment seems quite clean and tolerable. Where's the sludge? Where's the sewage? Isn't it available in the city? How do you deal with it? Gretel grabbed the white eagle warrior and asked. The white eagle warrior held his chest high and looked very proud. He led him around 3 times and came to a ditch. Look, there are ditches and water pipes everywhere here. There will also be a large tank placed at the pipe joint dash. Gretel has seen it. The garbage in the sewage will settle in the large tank, covering up most of the odor. The white eagle warrior pointed to a ramp next to him. The rubbish here will be removed regularly. Not only in the square, in the temple, in the palace, but also in many houses, there will be such facilities. The facilities in Heartland City and even Neva City where this body traveled through are not so complete. Greet sighed regretfully. A city like this really shouldn't be destroyed. Fortunately, Fortunately they came. Fortunately the council discovered the city and planned to cooperate with the Eagle country for a long time. He was led across the market by White Eagle Warrior. After walking not far, a scent of fragrance hit my nostrils. What is this? Barbecued meat? It smells so good. 2 large ovens were set up on the stall in front of them, and the flames were rising. On a stove, there is a stone slab on a small fire. Various meats cut into small pieces are grilled on the stone slab. The stall owner keeps turning the meat pieces with branches, sprinkling powder and brushing sauce on them. The other stove was much rougher. A whole animal was placed directly on the fire. The stall owner slowly turned the grill and watched the color of the meat change from red to white, from white to yellow, and the grease dripped. The only problem is that those roasted animals, not to mention cut into pieces, even if they were roasted whole, skinned and heads cut off, Gretel couldn't recognize them for a while. Thing. The White Eagle Warrior chatted with the stall owner for a few words, took a small bowl of barbecue from him, and offered it with both hands. "Dear Lord Shenzi, please try our barbecue." "What's this?" "This is rabbit meat, this is dog meat, please don't worry, these are raised daily, not caught in the jungle, they are not poisonous, you can eat them casually." "I'm not asking you if you're poisonous." Greet's cheeks twisted. "Forget about roasting rabbit meat, how can you roast dog meat? It's thin and woody. You need to fry it first, then put it in the pot and slowly simmer it with pepper and aniseed." "Oh, I forgot, the level of metallurgy in Eagle Country is limited. I guess they don't have iron pots and can't cook." Greet shrugged and spread his hands. Suddenly, a dark cloud passed overhead, the airship flew over the city, dozens of magicians stepped out of the hatch, and the goddess flew down like scattered flowers. Immediately afterwards, the light on the sun pyramid shone brightly, gradually condensing into the shape of an eagle, while the moon pyramid was filled with black mist, and a poisonous snake with black substance and white markings hovered above it, straightening its upper body. Then, the high-pitched reed flute sound was played from the 2 pyramids at the same time, singing in harmony, forming a beautiful and harmonious tune. "They are back." The White Eagle Warrior who was ordered to accompany Gretel had blood on his face and was extremely excited. "A great victory! A great victory! This time we win a great victory, we will definitely hold a grand sacrifice. If the Eagle God can bless me, maybe I can reach a higher level." "What kind of sacrifice?" Gretel had a bad feeling. The White Eagle Warrior looked at him strangely. "Of course we use prisoners of war. There are many white ghosts among the prisoners of war this time. The gods like to use outsiders as sacrifices the most." "Ah, noble son of the gods, I am not talking about you. The big market is already in a state of chaos. Every stall owner is busy closing the stall, and every customer consciously stands aside. At the edge of the square, a long list of prisoners was being escorted across the square by soldiers. Among them, an archbishop wearing a white gold-rimmed robe and a knight wearing steel armor are particularly eye-catching. Will they also be used as sacrifices? Of course. They are the best sacrifices. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Ed Lihau for the 100 starting coins.